Let's cross over to Washington and speak to Nizar Farsakh, who is a lecturer in international affairs at George Washington University. Professor, great to have you here with us on TRT World. Let me start with the obvious question. Why did the UN Security Council fail to demand a ceasefire in Gaza?
Thank you for having me. The U.S. has been specifically clear about its stance supporting Israel, that Israel's mission to destroy Hamas is something that the U.S. agrees with, and that a ceasefire would be to Hamas's advantage. So they kept watering down the language so that the word ceasefire itself is not there, which would give Israel the flexibility of continuing to have military operations while the aid is going into Gaza, because also the U.S. has been getting a lot of pressure on the fact that the humanitarian situation is getting to really catastrophic levels, with like over 500,000 people who are at starving levels now.
There have been multiple delays to the vote that took place in the United Nations Security Council. Many countries who are member of the Security Council wanted a ceasefire in Gaza, but just because the United States did not want it, the Security Council failed in doing so. So would it be fair to say that the United Nations as an entity has failed the people of Gaza?
Yes, the challenge is that this is how the United Nations is set up. It's not set up in a way that is fair or balanced or equitable. It's been set up to secure stability in the world. And after the Second World War, stability meant that the 5 nuclear nations have the veto power and can stop any resolution that's not in its favor. Because without such a system, arguably, they could use their nuclear power to get what they want. So the system is not fair. It's the system we have. But of course, the U.S. does shoulder the blame and the responsibility for the humanitarian situation in Gaza, because the U.S. has been the one party in this resolution that's been trying to resisting, in fact, the word ceasefire. And the challenge there is for the humanitarian aid distribution. A ceasefire is actually important. So it's the irony is that the aid might go in, but unfortunately it might not go to the people that need it. So it might be a victory, but it's really a Pyrrhic victory.
And one thing that I find rather mind-boggling in this resolution is the fact that it talks about creation of the conditions for a ceasefire. Who will decide when those conditions are created, and who will verify whether or not those conditions are there?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That's precisely the kind of ambiguous language that allows the parties in the war to interpret it the way they want. This is the kind of flexibility the U.S. wanted, so that Israel can continue with its military efforts without appearing that the U.S. is contributing to the humanitarian situation. So they're trying to have their cake and eat it.
And before I let you go, Professor, very quickly, let me ask you about the situation in Gaza right now. We were just speaking to our correspondent, Mohammed Al-Qasim, out of occupied East Jerusalem, and he told me that Israel is reportedly preparing for its third phase of its war on Gaza. And my understanding is that in this phase, Israel will be focusing more on the southern part of the besieged enclave after devastating the northern part of the territory. And now it appears that Israel is going to maintain some sort of operational control over the northern part of Gaza. Should one read this operational control as occupation?
Definitely. Well, in fact, just to be clear, Israel continues to be the occupying power. Just because Israel moved its troops in 2005 to the periphery of Gaza, the fact that they continue to control the water, the electricity, and entry and exit from Gaza, including also, of course, the maritime space and the population registry, means that Israel continues to be an occupying power. Now, the difference is that now it has troops on the ground, so Palestinians will not be able to go or use the northern part of the Gaza Strip. So we'll have something like the situation that we had in the 80s and the 90s in South Lebanon, where you had a strip of land where the Israelis occupy and would have, surgical missions here and there. This, of course, is the plan. I'm pressed to see how this plan is going to work when Hamas still continues to fire rockets from the north, the area that presumably Israel controls. So how successful it would be, I think Israel is going to need to do a lot of wordsmithing and a lot of optics to make it look like a success.
Fascinating insights into the topic. Nizar Farsakh, thank you very much for talking to us here on TRT World. Really appreciate your taking out the time.
Thank you for having me.